Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Brittnee. So, where do I begin with today's video? This video was pretty much a struggle from beginning to end for many different reasons, but in the end, I do think that things turned out all right. So it all began with an idea. Each year, the pumpkin spice season starts earlier and earlier, it seems. I figured I would hop to it and make something pumpkin themed. I don't know why, but a mini pumpkin roll popped into my head and I thought, how cute would that be to put inside of a half sphere chocolate snack bar mold? So I figured I may as well try to see if I can do it. Once I decided to do the mini pumpkin roll, I knew exactly what design I wanted to be on the outside. I hadn't tried the particular design out yet myself, but I had seen it done online in a bunch of different places. And the design is basically a metal sieve or mesh airbrush design. So basically you use a metal sieve as a type of a stencil and you spray cocoa butter through it with your airbrush and it leaves this cool like net looking design onto your mold. Now with any design, especially airbrush designs, it can take some trial and error to get it right. And with airbrushing, especially because you have so many things that you can adjust, like the temperature of your cocoa butter, the airflow and paint flow and other things. So here was my first mistake with this design. Originally, I wanted to use gold cocoa butter to spray through the sieve so that the mesh net pattern on top of the bar would be metallic gold. Then for the background of the chocolate, I was going to fade it from orange into yellow in the center and then back to orange. Well, I made my own edible gold cocoa butter with my favorite edible gold luster dust and soon realized that putting it into my airbrush was a bad idea. It wasn't spraying through my airbrush very well, so when I sprayed it through the sieve, it didn't even leave a pattern. It was just like spattering onto the mold, which was honestly fine. The mold now had nice flicks of gold all over it, so I was okay with that. But I had definitely clogged my airbrush with my homemade gold cocoa butter. I think it's because using this kind of luster dust, when the cocoa butter sits, the dust settles. And I think that just doesn't work well with the airbrush and can easily clog it. I'm going to remember this for the future. If I need to spray gold cocoa butter, I need to probably use one that is formulated by a cocoa butter company like Chef Rubber. They have lots of metallic cocoa butters. They aren't quite as shiny and metallic as this one, which is why I like this one better, but the formulation is probably better for spraying and whatever lusters they use don't settle like mine does. Anyway, so I changed my plan and decided I would spray the warm yellow color through the sieve to get the net pattern and then just do a pumpkin orange background. Spraying the cocoa butter through the sieve didn't go as easily as I had thought it would. It didn't leave as much of a pattern as I had imagined that it would, but I figured out that the key to getting more of the netting spray is to get the mesh as close to the mold as possible. The closer the stencil is to the mold, the clearer the design will be because as the cocoa butter sprays through it, it doesn't have as much space to spread out. So the difficult part was that you have to take your sieve and kind of bend it and mold it into the shape of the bar in order to get a decent result. So I sprayed in the yellow and then I backed it with my orange. And as I was looking at it in the mold, I just wasn't fully satisfied. The design looks pretty. I liked the gold flecks and I liked what I could see of the yellow pattern on top, but it just wasn't as dramatic or noticeable as I wanted it to be. So I actually cleaned out my mold and started over. And I came up with a new plan. I decided that a darker color pattern on top would stand out more against the orange background than the lighter yellow. So I decided to go with a darker, reddish, spicy orange color. I did like how the gold flecks turned out, and that could easily be recreated with just using luster dust paint rather than having to temper more gold cocoa butter. And then I decided to use the same orange as the background color. So I'll show you what I did. First, I had to get my cocoa butter colors ready. I had mixed my orange color earlier for the first failed design. I just took Chef Rubber's pre-colored jack-o'-lantern orange and slowly added in some of Chef Rubber's jade green. Adding the green in helps dull the orange just a little bit and make it look more earthy and pumpkin-y rather than being a bright, bright orange. To make the darker reddish rusty orange color, I took the same jack-o'-lantern orange and slowly added in some of Chef Rubber's pre-colored crimson red. After mixing my colors, I made sure that my mold was clean and polished. I used food-grade ethanol to do this, along with some cotton balls. This half-cylinder mold has some corners, and it's really helpful to use these pointy Q-tips to make sure the corners are really clean. To recreate the really small flecks of gold from my earlier failed gold airbrush spray, I just mix the edible gold luster dust with some lemon extract and use a toothbrush to flick it on. The key to getting really fine flecks is to dip the toothbrush into the paint, then dab most of it off so that when you flick the gold drops, they are really fine. Now to get good results with the sieve, you need to mold it into the same shape as your mold. So you basically take it and press it into your mold like this until it's as close to the same shape as you can get it. Next, I make sure that my reddish orange cocoa butter is tempered and I spray it across the middle of the mold through the sieve. The more you can press the sieve down into the mold to touch the surface of the mold, the better and cleaner the pattern will come out. So you can just repeat that process for each cavity and be sure to wipe off the sieve between every couple of sprays to keep things clean. If the cocoa butter starts to set up, you can carefully warm it with your heat gun so that it wipes off of the sieve easier. And you may not be able to tell, but my airbrush was still struggling. It just wasn't spraying out the reddish orange cocoa butter as much as I wanted it to. And then I really learned the truth when I was loading in my pumpkin orange to spray the background of the bars. And here my mold is, sitting and waiting, while I try my hardest to get my airbrush to spray out the orange. And it completely gave up. I couldn't get anything through. So at the time of filming this, I did not have time to figure out how to clean out my airbrush, so I decided I would just have to hand paint the orange in order to finish the snack bars. So now I will show you how you can use a large, soft, round brush to paint the background of a snack bar mold. Just take your tempered background color and dip the brush into it. Be sure not to get too much. You want to carefully paint on the thinnest coat possible, which can be hard when you're painting by hand. You want to get the color on in a nice thin coat, covering the whole cavity, and then get out of there. If you mess around and move the cocoa butter around too much, you can over-temper it. So my method for this mold was to paint down in the center, then up each side, then stick the brush down into the corners and brush up to get each end piece. Be sure to clean off the surface of the mold between painting on a clean paper towel. And then just repeat the process for all of the cavities. Once your first coat dries, carefully add in a second layer to make sure that the background is solid. I decided that caramel chocolate would go well with my pumpkin roll inspired filling, so I tempered that and shelled my chocolate bars. So, like I mentioned earlier, I had this silly idea to make mini pumpkin rolls inside of these chocolate bars, almost like a version of a cake bite filling. But instead of combining the cake and frosting into a dough, you keep them separate and roll them. If you're curious on how I did it, I'll show you really quick. I baked a pumpkin roll cake as you normally would, and I'll link the recipe that I used down below. I actually baked the cake and pulled it out of the oven before I decorated my chocolate molds so that it had time to cool. Then I just quickly mixed up the cream cheese frosting filling. Once my chocolate shells were ready, I sliced my cake into strips the same width as my half-cylinder chocolate mold. And to get the mini pumpkin roll, you just take one strip of cake, roll it flat between two pieces of parchment paper. Spread on a thin layer of cream cheese filling, roll that up just big enough to fit into your mold, trim the ends, then carefully lay it down into your snack bar. I like this idea more for a small party with family because it's a cute fall treat and people get a kick out of having the tiny mini roll inside a pretty molded chocolate. Of course, the last step is to cap the chocolate bars. So I temper more caramel chocolate and seal up my bars. Into the fridge for 20 minutes to contract, and then it's time to unmold. And I still wished that the mesh sieve stencil pattern was a bit more dramatic. It's subtle, but considering all the airbrush issues I had the other day, I'm pretty happy with how these turned out. I love the shiny gold and the subtle deep orange spice texture. And look how cute this tiny pumpkin roll is. Hey guys, before you go anywhere, I have an update. I fixed my airbrush by following my own airbrush deep cleaning tutorial video here on YouTube. If you ever need that, I'll link it right here. And I also ordered some loose mesh metal sheets from Amazon a couple days ago, and they arrived today. And I actually just finished filming yet another attempt of this pumpkin mesh chocolate snack bar design. You know, my first two attempts did turn out fine. They looked nice, but it was bugging me because I knew I could do better. And I'm really happy I redid them one final time because I can honestly say I love how they turned out. So here's the final result. I feel like the design has a lot more dimension, and I love how the colors turned out this time. It definitely reminds me of going to a pumpkin patch and corn maze or cornfield in the fall. The mesh pattern on the top is a lot more noticeable and pronounced, and the gold flecks add a nice subtle little sparkle. And even besides the colors, I do think this design feels really fall for some reason, and I think it might be because it's giving like plaid flannel or something with all the little squares. So before I end the video, let me show you what I did differently this time. Okay, so this round I am using all three colors, a nice warm yellow, my muted pumpkin orange, and my darker reddish orange. These are the loose metal mesh sheets from Amazon. I'll link them below. What I'm doing here is cutting a strip about the same width as my half cylinder snack bar mold. And then I'm laying down a paper towel to protect my mold from getting scratched, and I'm bending the mesh sheet to fit the mold. This works better than using a sieve for a handful of reasons. First, you don't have to destroy your sieve. Second, the flat mesh is easier to shape down into the mold, so it will be closer to the mold when you spray, which will create a cleaner stencil pattern. And third, I'll be able to make a stencil that covers 5 cavities at a time, which means more efficient spraying and less cleaning in between sprays. So my airbrush is back in working condition, woohoo! And I take the darkest orange and spray it down into the mold 1 cavity at a time, pressing the mesh down as close to the mold as I can. It took a couple test tries to see how much to spray and how dark I wanted the color to be. One row ended up being darker than the other, which is nice so we can see which one we end up liking best. Next, I spray my lighter orange color, focusing on one end of the bar, being sure to get into the corner really well, and then fading the color down to about the halfway point on the bar mold. And last, I sprayed a full background coating of this warm yellow cocoa butter color to fill in any blank space left in the mold. Off camera, I only shelled these. I didn't fill them because I did this spontaneously and in a rush. And now let's take them out of the mold and see how they turned out. All right, guys, I feel like today's video was just a little bit of a mess, but lucky for you guys, sometimes I make mistakes so that you don't have to. If you liked this video and learned something new, please let me know by giving it a like and leaving me a comment down below. Tell me what colors you would want to try this design out with, and what would be your top fall or pumpkin filling flavor. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, today's the day. If you'd like to see more pumpkin or fall themed treats, just click on one of these thumbnails. Thanks so much for watching today, and I'll see you soon. Bye.